So physical allergies. Kim, your hand went up. What do you got?
Yes, I'm allergic to oak trees and mold.
It is your oak trees and mold?
Yes.
And what happens when you're around an oak tree?
Well, I just get, swollen sinuses and things like that.
Okay, that's an intense reaction.
Yeah.
So when you're around an oak tree or mold, you get swollen, your sinuses swell.
Right.
All right, the way you know you're having an allergy is the intensity of the reaction. Okay? What else? Who else has physical allergies? You got, what do you got, Kurt?
I get some type of grass. Be nice to know which kind.
Okay. So there's certain grass that causes an intense reaction from.
All right,
what do you got? Jen.
I guess it's cold allergy, reaction to cold air, gets coming down with hives and.
Yeah. So, okay. So was there a time when you could be around cold air and you didn't have hives? When did the allergy begin?
About 2005.
Okay. So for all the years before that, you were okay.
Yeah.
And then at one point your body said, if I have any more of this, you're gonna see an intensity from me. And when did you start to have your issues with oak trees?
Oh, when I moved to Beaufort.
Okay. So before you moved to Beaufort, you and oak trees were okay.
Yeah.
But then when you came to Beaufort,
It tipped the scale.
yeah, and what about you and grass?
A couple of years ago.
Okay.
I began to notice it.
Yeah, the intensity.
Allergies with, I think it's flour, mold, and foods.
Certain foods. And how do you know that you're allergic? What's the intensity?
It's, you get congested.
Okay, you swell up, get congested. So that's how you know you're having a physical allergy, is the intensity of the response. And there are a lot of things that we may not like. I may not like the cold, but it doesn't mean I break into hives. Some people may not like oak trees, although lots of people do, but it doesn't mean they're going to have that kind of intensity in their response. Some people may not be comfortable with around certain kinds of grass, or may not like it, but they're not going to have that intensity of the response. So, but we wouldn't say that the cold is bad.
It's bad.
Yes. It's bad because of the decisions your body has made about cold and how it shows you those decisions. But for somebody else might love the cold. A lot of people love to leave Miami and get to colder weather, and other people don't. But the reaction you have to cold is because of your unique physical makeup. Kim?
Yeah, in fact, I love oak trees. It was really discouraging to find out I was allergic.
Right.
And so I decided to go through the whole routine of giving myself shots, allergy shots, so that I would build up some sense of ability to be around them again.
Okay. So, because the same things that can cause intensity could be something that somebody else loves. Could even be something we love. But it can still cause an intensity. And until you found out what it was, or you found out what it was, you didn't know.
No, I was hugging oak trees.
We talked about that yesterday.
You do what you gotta do.
Okay, so those are physical allergies. And just like we have intense physical responses, we can also have intense emotional responses. The same as there are certain physical conditions, the oak tree, the grass, the cold air, that can cause an intense physical reaction. We also can develop intense emotional reactions based on our unique life experiences, and we remember what we feel. And when we have positive emotional experiences, those tend to be things we want more of. But when we have very painful, upsetting, even traumatic emotional experiences, those can be the beginning of developing what we call emotional allergies. Things that we never want to go through again, and that if something even vaguely reminds us of it, an oak tree in the distance, the sense of cold air blowing through the door, or seeing that grass coming up, then we can get triggered with the same intensity that a physical allergy would trigger us. until we know what it is, we can hand the bill for it to whoever happens to be there, because we don't know what's causing it. And it can leave them with a sense of not even having a clue of what just happened. The hand go up?
Yeah, because I don't know, I need clarity, or I don't know, I need help processing through this. Of course, there's nothing wrong with an oak tree, there's nothing wrong with grass. I am going to have a violent physical response if a cobra bites me, or a diamondback rattler. So there are some things that there is, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the snake, but there is something really wrong there.
Yeah, or if you got hit by a car.
Yeah,
Or caught on an airplane.
so, I don't know, where should I compartmentalize this with the things that really are wrong or bad and coming from a place that is not goodwill?
So the things that are unique, there are certain things that human beings have in common.
Okay,
If any of us fall out of an airplane or get hit by a car, there's going to be a universal response.
yes,
But in terms of allergies, those are unique to us. For one person, penicillin will save their life, and for another person, it can take their life.
okay,
For one person, an oak tree is something to revel over and just sit under and enjoy a picnic, and for somebody else, it's something to run from, because of the unique response. What's the other, being bit by a cobra, there would be a pretty universal response.
but that's not a good thing.
Well, there's a lot of things we may think aren't good.
Okay,
You know, Jen and I were talking earlier, do you mind if I talk about something else? Okay, about the smells at Ground Zero. He was at Ground Zero right afterwards, and there were certain smells from Ground Zero that are probably with you for the rest of your life. So that's not a good thing. And somebody could smell something similar to that and say, that's distasteful. I don't like that. I don't want to be around it. My guess is if he smelled it, there's going to be an intensity in his response. If somebody grew up in an environment where somebody was when they raised their voice, it led to violence, or it led to betrayal, or it led to abandonment.
right,
And somebody raises their voice, it could be incredibly frightening.
I mean, you know, where it's
That's-
like, this isn't like grass or oak trees. This is a legitimate thing that needs to stop.
Got it?
Does that,
Yeah.
I don't know,
I get
I'm
it.
trying to reconcile it.
So there's a lot of things, I mean, there are a lot of things that need to stop. You know,
Okay.
Killing in Syria needs to stop.
Okay,
The starvation in Africa needs to stop. Domestic violence needs to stop. Suicide needs to stop. I
okay,
could go on.
okay, okay.
And I would guess that most of us would all agree that these are things that should stop. But if there was an intensity inside me that rose up around any of the horrific things I just named, that intensity would be a sign that I've got an allergy
Right,
because of my unique experiences. No, it's really about understanding that the intensity of our response is unique to our life experiences. And because one
Okay.
person has it and someone else doesn't mean there's something right or wrong with someone any more than if one person has a physical allergy or doesn't.
okay, I understand the point.
Yes.
We've had festivals.
One moment, yes.
So on the flip side, similar to what we were just talking about, there are some things that might seem good to most people, like a hug, that to an individual, if someone walked up to them and hugged them, they would have a severe emotional
Right,
response.
and there, many people do. If somebody, I've read stories about people who were held in captivity. And if somebody came close to their personal space, they had a very intense reaction to somebody coming close to their personal space. And somebody could have interpreted that as rejection. They could have interpreted that as being, oh, this is a mean person. Because they don't know that based on their life experiences, their reaction makes absolutely perfect sense. So yes, somebody for whom touch led to bad things may have some very real issues when somebody even makes a gesture as if they're going to touch them, while the person making the gesture may just want to be loving and kind and comforting. I did a training in Georgia, with a lot of people from Morehouse College, which is where Martin Luther King went, and there were a number of people there who had known Martin Luther King, including a preacher who was very close to him. And he had said that when he and Dr. King were traveling, and somebody would say, "What are y'all doing here?" That was signs of something very bad about to happen. Those were very threatening words. And then he noticed that even in the present, decades later, when somebody said something like that to him, it reminded him of lynchings, of people being murdered, or people being chased. That's an emotional allergy. So let's look at an example. Can you read that, Tiffany?
Suppose that when you were a child, every time there was a holiday, your father got drunk. Each holiday, you would hope that things would be different, but they never were. You remember starting out the day excited about the event, but each time your dad would come home drunk, you would feel angry, hurt, and disappointed. Now today, it is a special holiday and your husband/wife is about to pour a drink and you go into a fit of rage.
Right. So what's causing that fit of rage?
The dad alcohol, the alcohol.
Connection.
Yeah, that, the
The
memory.
connection.
Yeah, the memory.
It's
of-
not the alcohol. It's not the drink. That's really the message of this. There's a lot of ways I'm going to get to that message, and I'm going to get to it several times. But that's the message. It's not the drink. And everybody else, all they see is, Dad's been great, everything's wonderful, all these good things happen, Mom poured a drink, or Dad poured a drink, or somebody poured a drink, and somebody goes into a fit of rage. And people are going to think, what's wrong with this person? Is this person nuts? I don't want to be home, this is a terrible environment, I can't believe this is happening again. But that's because they don't have the pieces to the puzzle of his life. And by the way, we don't have the pieces of the puzzle to his dad's life either, or to his dad's life. I have found in my work that when you really have the pieces of the puzzle to someone's life, their life makes sense, and their behaviors make sense. Any temptation to judge someone's actions or behaviors comes from having a very limited knowledge of their life. Kurt?
I'm going to ask a question, you can table it if you want.
Table it.
Does an emotional allergy become then a passion? For example,
Yes.
my mother is opposed to drinking. She's a teetotaler. Doesn't drink.
Yeah.
No alcohol. Why? Because she's seen the negative effects of alcohol from her husband when they were newly married. My dad no longer drinks. But she's a teetotaler, hardcore, pushed it passionately on all her children.
Right.
Be teetotalers.
Right.
So when does an emotional allergy become? I think that when I was in high school, I helped Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Good.
I participated with that.
Yeah.
So when does an emotional allergy become an allergy to a passion?
Well, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with an emotional allergy. There's nothing wrong with knowing you're allergic to penicillin and saying, I'm not going to be around penicillin. There's nothing wrong with having an allergy to grass and staying away from grass. There's certainly nothing wrong with saying, I've seen the impact of alcohol or drug abuse, and that anything that reminds me of that I find so distasteful, there's going to be an intensity in me that's going to cause me to get my son marching for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Allergies don't have to be bad things. And we're not saying that allergies are bad, but what we're getting to is the importance of being aware of our allergies, of knowing what they are, so that when there's an intense reaction, we know it was the oak tree, or it was the cold air, or it was the grass. Because if we don't know what it was, it's very easy to think it was about something else. It's very easy to think that the allergy is about the drink, and not recognize that the allergy is about everything that drink is connected to. Make sense? And it doesn't mean the drinking's okay, but that's not where the intensity is coming from.
Right.
Our feelings are all okay. No matter the intensity of them is okay. That's part of the message throughout this program, is it's okay to feel what we feel. But understanding them, being able to talk about them, can be the difference between feelings that hijack us and sabotage our ability to make our dreams come true and to be close to other people, versus the opportunity to do the exact opposite. When you understand what your allergies are, when you know what triggers you, you have much more control. And you can be healing to each other. And if you remember in the 3 hopes and 3 fears at the very beginning, The last of those is that none of the upsetting, hurtful things that happened in the past will happen again with you. Sometimes we don't even know. We don't know what decisions we made as a result of the events of our life. All we know is what we feel. And if we don't have that ability to pause and to say, this is what I feel, and then to explore it, which is much easier to do in a conversation with a loved one than to try to sort out in our mind, or even with a third party sometimes. There's no comparison between doing to the intimacy that comes when you can do that with each other, and the healing that you can be to each other. So that's the goal. So it's not that it's bad. It's not that there's anything wrong. Passions are good. And sometimes the most horrible, I'm standing here today because of all the pain my mother went through over the breakup of her marriage. And because of how upsetting it was for me that I couldn't keep the promise to my kids, that they would never go through that. So that became my passion. Look at how this can transform, become a loop. Because what starts out as something happening that triggers an intense reaction very often becomes a loop that people can spend, the couples, human beings, people who love each other, can spend a lifetime on. Let's say one person's loop can begin with a triggering event. So in this case, it begins with the husband pours himself a drink at dinner. And because of everything that reminds her of, and because of all that it's connected to, she gets triggered. And the way she knows she's triggered is intensity builds up inside her. Now, nobody may know that's building up inside her. She knows what she feels, but there's not a billboard. If somebody's sitting next to her who's very sensitive to energy, might say, ooh, something changed in the room. You can cut the tension with a knife. But, things like that, but nobody really knows what's happening inside her. And then she has feelings. So her feelings could very easily be fear and anger. He just had a drink. I've got this intensity inside. I feel afraid. I feel angry. But again, that's all happening inside her. Nobody would necessarily know what's there. And then she has thoughts about those feelings. Remember, feelings come before thoughts. First we have the feeling, and then we have the thoughts about the feeling. So the thoughts could easily be, he's going to get drunk just like my father. I'm not safe, something bad's going to happen to me. But then what we see on the outside is all that's still happening inside. What we see on the outside is the behavior. You see that she starts to become insulting, sarcastic, distant, which are behaviors that make perfect sense. If you're around that tree and it's causing you to have an intense physical reaction, you're going to want to get away from it. If you're around the cold that's causing an intense physical reaction, you're going to want to get away from it. It's because of how it interacts with you. If she has experience where that drink and that action represents something that was dangerous, she's going to want to get away from it. And she may actually punish the person who reminds her of it for something they had nothing to do with. Because the fact that he's having that drink does not mean he's like her father. But she's been triggered because of the allergy that she has. For the most part, she also does it. All she knows is what she feels. And she's reacting to what she feels. And she doesn't know where it's coming from. That's most often the case.
So basically, a good analogy would be basically troubled kids. Kids who act out in school, they may not know why, but all the other stuff from home or all this other stuff can then come out of their behavior.
A kid who, when they hear a screeching car, suddenly had gunshots coming through their front window, and then they hear a screeching car, could get triggered. So her emotional allergy could be based on, Tiffany, can you read that?
Her emotional allergy can be based on a love knot or another early belief, or a decision that she came to. For example, my father came home drunk every holiday. He was mean and angry and didn't show me love. So if my partner drinks, even one drink, something bad will happen. He doesn't love me.
But then he has his own life experiences. He grew up in a home, in this scenario, where nothing was ever good enough. Whatever he did, it wasn't good enough. He got an A, he should have got an A+. He was captain, he should have been the captain of everything. You know, whatever he did, he was always picked on, he was always criticized. And he made a decision that he hated criticism. And that anything that even slightly reminds him of being criticized triggers intensity inside him. Not because of the criticism, but because of what it reminds him of, what it triggers inside him. So all of a sudden, here he is, it's Thanksgiving, they're all there, he's been working all week to help bring everybody together, cook the turkey, do whatever, and here she is criticizing him, and he doesn't have a clue why. He does not even a remote clue. All he knows is here everybody is around the table, and look what I have to endure. And then he has feelings about it, which very normal that he could feel hurt, afraid, even angry, and then he has thoughts or beliefs about those feelings, which very naturally he could say, everything I do she resents. You know, clearly this is not somebody that loves me and something really bad is going to happen. But that's all inside. Other people wouldn't know. But what they do know is the reaction they see. And the reaction they see is he starts dirty fighting. He starts calling her names at the Thanksgiving table. They start to argue. They become sarcastic. They become distant. And they get on this loop that certainly makes the holidays no fun. Certainly makes the holidays no fun and makes people say, I'm not coming back next year. You know, I got other plans for Christmas. Because people often spend their lives on that loop. A lot of youngsters, who became adults, including many of us, grew up in homes with people who spent their lives on that loop. They may have been married for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, constantly triggering each other, getting reactive towards each other. Now the really good news, as many of you know, is there are exit ramps. And the exit ramps to the loop are not difficult to find. Come up with an emotional allergy. And here, let's talk one out. So who's got something that when it happens it triggers an intense reaction? So what's something that when someone does it triggers an intense reaction in you? When you?
Calling wrong right.
Okay. Let's go with the wrong right.
Okay.
All right. When you try to make something that's wrong sound like it's okay. I feel. What do you feel?
I feel like a caged animal or a cornered animal.
Okay. I
come out fighting.
Well, that's going to be the reaction.
Okay.
But you feel.
I feel trapped. I feel vulnerable.
You feel trapped and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think when you have those feelings?
I think fight or flight.
Okay, I either have to get out of here or I got to stand up for myself and
Yeah.
for what's right.
Right.
And then what's the fear you have?
The fear.
I worry about. What do you worry about? What's the fear you have?
I worry about being abused and dominated. So I fight really hard. Wrong is wrong. And I'm going to stand on that. And right is right. Stand on that.
Thank you.
And I'm not crazy.
No, not even close.
Sorry.
And
It's visceral.
It is,
It's visceral.
because of your life experience.
Yeah. It's a lot of years. Okay, I can go to the next one.
Thank you. And the reaction people see from you, the behavior.
It's crazy.
Well, only if someone didn't know what you've been through. For anyone, I suspect I speak for everyone here. For everyone who's hearing what you've been through, your reaction's not only not crazy, it's something, I mean, I know I admire you, I value you. I'm grateful that you did what you needed, that you survived. And I appreciate that you turned that into a passion to making the world a better place, including refusing.
Well, I do stick up for other people, and nobody's going to be hurt on my watch or in my presence.
So that's awesome for the people whose lives are fortunate to be connected to yours.
But he knows, and it's still hard for him.
Okay.
When I go,
All right, so that's the behavior. The behavior is you go on the offensive.
Yeah,
So when something happens, it triggers, it reminds you.
yeah.
So when she goes on the offensive like that, what happens with you?
Immediate defensiveness.
You get defensive?
The defensiveness would manifest itself in aggression.
Okay, so you become
Because I
aggressive.
had an allergy.
Right?
Using your terminology, I had an allergy too.
Right. That's generally how it is.
And so
So when she would do that with you,
I would,
what was your feeling? What was the feeling that you had when that would happen?
what was my feeling?
Yeah.
Uh,
Angry, sad?
I
scared?
was.
Not the
feeling
thought, the feeling.
that I was, my feeling was I was being attacked.
Okay. So the feeling was,
And I was being treated unjustly.
all right, this isn't fair, maybe fear or anger.
Right.
And what the thought was, and what did it remind you of?
I can take it back to a specific event. It reminded me of being 5 years old and my dad had a situation between him and my father. And it didn't matter who it was.
But it took you back. When that happened,
That's where
That's
my
where-
whole response would come out, yeah.
it reminded you of being that helpless, a 5-year-old who didn't have the same resources you have today
Right,
to protect and defend yourself
right.
or other people.
And I made a decision. Nobody ever do that to me again.
Right. And then, but that's all happening inside.
Yes,
Until you became, or unless you were, someone who was able to know that and confide that. All somebody would have seen was the reactive behavior. What's the belief you have? When you remembered what that was, it sounds like you just said the belief. The belief is nobody's going to ever do that to me again.
that's the belief.
And then the behavior is you became aggressive,
Very aggressive.
right? And that just triggered her even more.
Absolutely, because then I'm calling wrong right.
That's how she interprets it, right? And that's what she sees.
No, there was some wrong.
There was
We're calling wrong, right?
There was wrong.
Okay.
You know, this is before. This isn't what happens now. They're calling wrong right.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get on the crazy cycle and it accelerates.
Right. Yes, I get
You're
it.
both playing off each other.
Yeah, and that can be an endless loop, and it often is. Thank you very much, both of you, for sharing that. Yes?
In your experience, does it seem like people with those perfectly, and I hate to say compatible, but the allergies that tend to feed off each other, do they seem drawn together sometimes?
I see that a lot.
You say you hear opposites attract, but it seems like people with complementary or uncomplimentary.
So, I believe that the challenges we face in our relationships are no accident. That we are there to be healing to each other.
I would agree with that.
And we're there to be healing because there are things to be healed. So those allergies that cause so much friction and can, as they're getting triggered, if we can do what I have no doubt you two have been doing, if we can confide about it, if we can be the witness to each other's lives, not only don't we have to be on the loop, but we can help heal each other. And in doing so, literally make the world a better place. The higher goal of what we've been doing here is to get to a place where we can know ourselves better, where we can confide in someone that we know is not there to hurt us, that someone who loves us, is committed to us, and that in doing that, we can be healing to each other, and to create a world where that's available to people, what you all have shared. So, because we can't, I know that life includes some really horrible experiences, and I also know that we can be healing to each other.
I agree. I just feel weepy. I can't
All right,
put
so-
a feeling to it.
Okay, so you want to do this? Want to demonstrate it?
Okay,
See what comes out of it?
sure.
You willing to be here?
Let's go for it.
Is that all right?
Let's
Thank
do
you.
it.
Is that okay with you?
Once more into the breach, my friend.
Thank you. Okay, come on up, let's go. So, who's willing to share what came out of that for you? Okay, other examples? Let's have some other examples. Thank you both for that. Thank you. Very much. Thank you. I'm going right here, and then I'm coming here. Yes.
I think, if I may say this, and not that it's the same, but Natalie and I mirror a lot of what you got through. Although to my chagrin, I think that's the right word. Natalie and I, friends or other couples that we've noticed, or me, Natalie will take on the guy stuff, and I take on the girl stuff. It happens all the time. So I'm like Naomi, and Natalie's like Kurt. And I'm not saying Kurt and Naomi that we're going through the same thing, but Natalie and I were just shaking our head yes on a lot of that firm stuff we had. And that was, I think, the emotional allergy Natalie had. But I won't speak for her. For me, this was very, like, I am whooped. I was expecting to come here this weekend to get some tools for, or something to help me be a better chaplain, to better take care of my Marine sailors, and something to help me make the marriage better. I didn't sense the depth and breadth of what I was going to be doing emotionally, especially today. And so I realized, I've got control issues, which I've known in the past, but not reinforced, but also the stuff of what Natalie, and I'm rambling with this one.
No, you're not. You're not. Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Natalie, you wanted to share an allergy that you?
Sure. It was, this one was pretty clear to me, thankfully. I didn't have to dig too deep on this one, but for me, it's anger.
So when somebody raises their voice?
Yes, when somebody gets angry and raises their voice.
Okay, so let's say when he raises, when you raise your voice, and I feel.
When you get angry and raise your voice, I feel hurt and disappointed.
And what do you think to yourself? What's the belief or thought you have at that point?
The belief, I probably tell myself that I've done something wrong.
Okay.
To cause the anger.
It's my fault.
Yeah.
And what do you become afraid of or worry about?
I worry that silence will happen after that because I shut down.
That you're going to become silent, or he
Yes, I will.
And when you shut down, what does that look like? What's the behavior?
I withdraw from him.
And how do you withdraw? You just walk away? Withdraw physically or just emotionally and mentally?
I'm done, and I walk away.
So when, Chad, when she walks away from you and basically gives you the message that you're invisible, you don't count, she doesn't want anything to do with you, what do you feel?
Ignored. And like Naomi was saying, I want to fix this, and I want to fix this right now.
Right.
And so, because I remember.
So you feel ignored?
I feel ignored, because I remember hearing my parents, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I
you're right
remember
there.
my parents arguing, and I vowed that I'm going to fix this in my marriage.
Right.
And that may have part of why I'm a chaplain, I don't know. And I remember my grandparents, and a lot of arguing, a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming. It was normal. But I remember vowing to fix that in our relationship. And I was going to talk to her. I was blue in the face. I didn't consider what my wife was going to have to. But that's what I remember.
Right.
So I believed that if we talked about it until we were blue in the face, that we could resolve it.
Right.
And it wouldn't result in all that other. And so I behaved by pursuing her, which is not what she needs.
Well, and as he pursues you more, what happens with you?
You shut down more. I shut down more.
Okay.
I withdraw more. I feel like I'm going to implode if you don't leave me alone.
And where do you think that comes from?
Because when there was arguments in my home growing up, there was a grave silence afterwards.
And that's what you learned?
Everything was quiet.
That's what you learned?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's, come here, let's try this. See if it works. Ready?
Where are those copies?
Really good. Okay, we're gonna do this non-verbally. Okay, ready? We're gonna do this non-verbally. So let's see, who's gonna be the one triggering it?
Who's going to trigger me?
Okay, so show us non-verbally what it looks like when you're when you're angry and you raise your voice. Okay, show us what it looks like non-verbally when you withdraw from him. Show us non-verbally what it looks like when you continue to pursue her. And show us non-verbally what it looks like. All right, so that's the allergy in action. All right, come on back, let's start over. Start again. Show us show him the sadness and pain you feel inside when his anger comes out? What if instead of turning away and withdrawing, as you and generations before you were programmed to do, what if instead, when you see his anger, you could be vulnerable with him and show him what it feels like inside? What would that look like? And what would it look like, Chad, when you saw that vulnerability for you to respond to her with empathy? Thank you both.
I think the difference in her body language was walking away is she walking away from me or walking away from the pain? Vulnerability shows that, all right, there's the pain there, but she's still there with me.
But it takes safety. People will generally be vulnerable once, maybe twice, but if we don't respond with empathy, if we respond in any other way, they stop. So, and many people don't respond that way because they just don't know how. You do know how, and you can help other people know how. And when you know how, and when you can choose that, which is that really is emotional intelligence. It's that ability to choose. Now that in and of itself doesn't create empathy from the other person. So, and that's why I really wish that so many people could have this, before they choose who they're going to share their life with. To say, is this somebody that I can have those experiences with? So the loop starts, in your case, with he raises his voice in anger. And you very naturally, very normally, based on your life experiences, could have feelings of fear, hurt, and anger as a result of that. And then you could have thoughts, which is, anyone who yells at me does not love me. If you're raising your voice at me, it must mean you don't care about me, you don't love me, I'm not important to you. And then your behavior, doesn't it look like we just wrote this for you?
Right. I gave you the silent treatment.
I give you the silent treatment. And that's the beginning of dirty fighting. Silent treatment is one of the most effective dirty fighting techniques we have. That triggers him. Because your silent treatment triggers his feelings of hurt, anger, and fear. And his belief that says, if you're not going to talk to me, you don't really respect me, you don't love me, you may leave me. And that's not acceptable. I'm not going to let us get to that place. So what does he do? He raises his voice further, pursues you even more. And that loop goes on and on and on.
It's an infinity loop.
That's what we call it. That is what we call it, until you get to the exit ramps, which you just both demonstrated. The exit ramps are your ability to be vulnerable. It was that nanosecond that I talked about when we first got together. That moment when generations of experience that I think is programmed into our DNA told you to go to the silent treatment. Because that's what so many generations of women had done before you. But you took a chance of being vulnerable with this man who loves you, chose you, is committed to you, would do anything to protect you. And you took a chance of being vulnerable. And he responded to your vulnerability with empathy. And that creates a whole different infinity loop. That creates a loop of vulnerability and empathy, which spells love. And becomes your confiding, your willingness to confide, and his ability to listen with empathy allows you to see you're not this person from my past. You do love me. I can trust you to listen to my feelings and care. And you could, even say, what, when you raise your voice, when you yell at me, it scares me. I'm afraid you're going to leave me like my father left. whoever left, or whatever the situation was. So the feelings they get changed from a reactive behavior to sympathy, it's not against me, and there's increased empathy, reassurance. And that's available. That is totally available to human beings to have that experience. And in terms of this experience, that's what we're looking to get to, where that can be the cycle we create. Where it's safe to be vulnerable with a partner who can respond with empathy. And that becomes a cycle in which experiences of love and intimacy and acceptance and life itself becomes so much deeper. And it's available to us. It is. The far majority of couples who break up, and kids, the 1 million+ kids a year who don't grow up with their parents, it doesn't have to be that way. And not for all, but for most of them, if they could get to a place where not only when they lose each other, but they would have levels of love and intimacy beyond anything they experienced before. So, and you all can create that. I have no doubt whatsoever that you can create that. And to me, that's sacred work. You do that for one person, for one couple. It's so sacred.